women in film world, and then we'll have Danielle introduce herself as she walks in. So I'll start with you at the end, Joanna.
Well, I'm Joanna. I'm an actress, writer and producer. I've worked in the independent industry for about 8 years. Starting in Britain, I've made maybe 20, 22 independent feature films. I tend to pick scripts that are political or artistic. I currently have a film that's screening in the Whitney Museum in the incomplete history of protest. So while I'm not a mainstream name in terms of acting, I have lots of stories about being a female in the industry. And two things that I learned, among many, but two that really stood out, was that to protect myself, I needed to create intellectual property. So I needed to be writing my own material, and I needed to be producing. And I got signed with 3 Arts Entertainment, and that's where I am now, exploring that. And it's made a huge difference in terms of my journey. And the second thing was to surround myself with females, like-minded, strong females. And that's really helped my journey, and that's why I'm honoured to be here and listen to everyone.
Okay, I'm going to make this really quick, but there's a lot. So all I ever wanted to be was an actress. And then I got out of acting school and realized that the roles available for women were shit. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'll just write better roles and then I'll play them. So then I decided to become, well, first I was a secret playwright for 7 years because my agent told me that I couldn't do that. And then I decided I would be an out-of-the-closet filmmaker. So I made a feature film with some colleagues for $80,000, and we crowdfunded. It was like the scrappiest thing. We had no idea how to make a movie, and we just went to coffee with people until we figured it out. But we had an all-female creative team accidentally because we didn't know that that was a thing. And very quickly started getting told, oh yeah, but you're going to need a male producer on board at some point just so that people will trust you with their money. And we were like, what? What year are we in? And so we made the film. There was an audience for it. We managed to deal with the money responsibly, even though we were women. And I thought this was so crazy. And this was like 2014 that this film came out, so it was right before this whole women in film conversation caught fire again. So I wasn't hearing anybody talk about how bad this was. And so I started talking about it, which suddenly, I think everyone at that time was really afraid to talk about it still. Not everyone, a lot of people were still very afraid to talk about it. And I didn't know enough to be afraid to talk about it. So then suddenly I was like on the speaking circuit talking about this. And suddenly I developed this national, hi Danielle, you want to come? So then I ended up with this whole speaking career about women in film. In the middle of that, I ended up speaking to this room full of CEO women, not from the film industry, one of whom was the former CFO of the city of Chicago. I ended up partnering with her in a venture capital fund called the 51 Fund, which when it launches later this year will be a venture capital fund to finance films by female directors to try to address the inequity of financing for filmmakers. So I'm an accidental venture capitalist. Then I made my second feature film, also with an all-female creative team. I gave a TED talk about this issue that then went viral in the middle of Weinstein. 1 million people watched it in 3 months, which then led to a book deal about this subject. So I'm in the middle of writing a book, which will come out in fall of 2019 about women in film. And also, I'm in the middle of pulling together this, well actually it's 6 months in, there are over 116 nonprofits and organizations and companies working on parity in the industry, but there's a lot of like overlap and nobody's talking to each other. It's all happening in silos. So in January I launched the Women in Film Revolution, which is an organization designed to pull the leaders of those organizations together on a monthly basis to talk and share ideas and collaborate so that we can get together and change the world.
Yes, she deserves an applause. Hello, my name is Lauren Atkins. I'm the founder of NYC WebFest, New York's first web series festival. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary this year, and I'm especially honored to be invited here because, as I was telling the ladies, we were talking in the bar area before we came in, that so many of the creators that we see are female. And so this is kind of how I shamed HuffPost to cover us last year. While all of these negative stats were coming out and the Me Too movement started, it just wasn't my reality. Like, I was seeing all of this great stuff. We screened 89 projects last year, and what did I say? I think it was 668 were produced by women, and almost half were written by women, and I think a third directed by women. In fact, in our 4-year history, we're going into our 5th now, 3 times Best Director has gone to a woman. So thank you for having me.
My name is Danielle Earle. I'm actually the writer, producer, director of a series called Broken is Love. And yeah, it's a long time ago. But I'm also in the Writers Guild of America East writer. And I'm working on a feature film right now, Serial Killer in Harlem. So we have actually the first day of filming is like tomorrow. So it's like, it's been crazy. So, but I'm so happy to be here and meet you guys. And like, this is awesome. So thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Katrina Medoff. I'm moderating today, and to give you guys a sense of my connection to the women in film world, I am the founder and co-director with Tracy Sayer, who's in the audience today, of the Women's Weekend Film Challenge, which is a weekend-long film challenge for all female casts and crews. So we had 160 plus participants that we put together into these teams, these all-female crews, so that people were working with people that they'd never worked with before. They could network with each other, and they could create films with women behind and in front of the camera to get those in film festivals and, you know, in the eyes of other people. And so we just had our inaugural challenge in January with 9 teams. So we created 9 films in that one weekend, and we're going to be doing it again here and in other places, hopefully. So that's what I'm doing. And today, especially in light of the Me Too movement and Time's Up, it seems like right now everyone in the country is really focused on this issue of gender equality in the industry. It seems like finally allegations are being taken seriously against industry mammoths like Harvey Weinstein. People are finally caring about egregious wage inequalities on major TV shows and films, and people are starting to use inclusion riders to get more diversity in their projects. And that's on the Hollywood level, that's what we're seeing. And so what I really wanted to talk about here was, what can we do as independent filmmakers in New York and elsewhere to make a difference in this industry and to get more gender parity in film, even though we are not celebrities with huge, you know, platforms, huge followings that we can leverage. So I guess my first question would be a very, very broad one, which is, what can we do on the grassroots level? Like, what are some of the major steps that we can be taking? I'll hand this to whoever's ready.
We can make our stuff. And this is so important because in a lot of my work, I'm dealing with a lot of the agents in the studios, and for a moment, for a brief glimmering moment, they do actually feel like they need to do the work to hire female directors and writers. And I question their genuine commitment to this thing, but and we'll see how long that lasts. But for the moment, it is real, and they're scrambling. And the thing that I keep hearing is, well, we can't find any women. And I keep feeling like that scene in Election where Reese Witherspoon, Matthew Broderick's like, does anyone have the answer? And she's like, yes. And he's like, anyone? Anyone? And she's like, yes. What the fuck? But there are a lot of hurdles to overcome with them accepting that women can do these jobs. There's a big trust gap. They don't believe that we can make quality content that is as good. But the thing is that we have the tools of production ourselves. And no, we can't make huge films yet, but we can crowdfund. With the technology is cheap enough that you can make a film at this point for $5,000 on your iPhone. Like, you can do it, and it is so important that we do this. We commissioned a study for the 51 Fund to look at the whole pipeline, right? Because we know that women are directing only 5% of studio films, which incidentally is the same percentages in 1945. I'm not kidding. And we knew that women are graduating at this point from film school at 50%. so we were wondering, like, where is this happening? And my hypothesis going in was that it was going to be at the $1 million budget mark, because across industries it's shown that when women have to raise more than $1 million, that's where they fall out because of the trust gap with women and money. Because we're going to go to the mall and spend it or something. I don't know. But what we found is actually, so 50% of film school graduates are women, and only 18% of micro-budget films are directed by women. So the biggest drop-off is actually before women direct their first feature film. Then it's 12% female directors in the $1 to $5 million budget range, and then 5% in the studios. So although we don't have access to the levers of power within the studio system, what we have absolute control over is that 18% number. And there's no question in my mind that if we could get that up to 50%, that it would help push the needle down the pipeline. So make your stuff, don't wait for permission, make it. And this is, sorry, I'm gonna,
You're great.
hit me if I keep going too much, but I went to Ireland recently where they were working really hard to address this issue, and they were doing, and it's the same thing there, and they were trying to figure out, like, why is this happening? And so they were doing exit interviews with film school graduates, the men and the women, to like figure out why this was happening. And so they would say to them, well, what are you doing next? What are you going to do when you get out of film school? And the men would say, oh, I have a production company and I'm going to make a movie. And they'd say, oh, what's your production company? And basically it's like a laptop in their mom's basement. And they're like, great, okay. And the women would say, oh, I'm going to try to do X. And they're like, no, you have a production company. So there's like a thing, we have to like just do it and like find the confidence of a mediocre white man and make your movie.
And just following on from that, absolutely, it's obviously a confidence issue. If you're self-selecting out, we don't realise how much we've been told that we can't do something. Right. Like we don't even realise it, it's subconscious. And we think we're doing everything and being confident, but actually it's ingrained. So exactly at that point that you're referring to, it's how do we have the same confidence as the boys, as the men, and it's faking that confidence, it's matching it, and it's surrounding ourselves by empowering people. So being at these events where we can feel confidence and be empowered and go out with the same agenda and the same drive and ambition. Where failing isn't an option, fear is not an option. This is, I've heard you say this before, it's our duty to go and do this. And I think that's very important to remember that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the thing that we can do directly is content. So everyone who's a filmmaker in this room can go home and check their material and the diversity and inclusion in the characters they are writing. You can do that right now and make sure that your females are CEOs, that we're powerful, that we're changing the actual image that is on our screen. We can do that. We have less control at the moment with the people that are employing us, the white males. You know, we need men on board to help us with that because they have the power to help us, and that's a dialogue to unite. But we can all, as females, change our characters and make sure that we're writing strong female roles, females in CEO roles immediately.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's making the content, and I always call it like, you know, because I'm an entrepreneur, it's kind of like the sidestep. Like, and I say the sidestep because I always think of the scene in Sex and the City when Carrie falls on the runway and Heidi Klum just walked over her looking gorgeous. Like, that's what you have to do. And so we had a women's panel. We had a women's panel at the festival last year, and it was just filled with women that were like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna learn how to use the camera then. And they were like, can you show me how to do that? And the guys would be condescending, but like the woman that told the story won Best Director at the festival and then went on to win Best Web Series at a film festival. So it really is that. It's just a matter of, and I don't mean like sidestepping over other women, I just mean like you just kind of ignore it and do, right? Otherwise, what else, what choice do you have, really?
Oh my gosh, it's the same, like when I started doing films and everything, a long time ago, like I would say like 2008, 2009, but I basically did this, like the same, I kind of just learned on my own, but I went to school for filmmaking, but it's the same thing, like you kind of feel like it's,
I didn't go to school for business, I went to school for film and started a company, like it's what, you know.
And so I guess like it's very important to also have a female, you know, crew helping other people, especially like, with me doing projects and everything, I was at, there's another event that we went to for the summit recently, about a month ago. We did like the same thing panel. And a lot of the girls, especially, young girls of color, too, like there wasn't, pretty much when I was growing up, like no, directors, nobody like holding the camera. Now it's totally different. You see like, her name was Dee Reese, the director was nominated for, and like, and like now there's like, something for them to like aspire towards and, everything. So I think as directors, female directors, we kind of have to help each other. If you see like a female sound person, reach out to them and say, hey, why don't you come out on set or film production? So yeah, it's about just like kind of including them, especially women in the, behind the scenes. Also, try your best if you know about filmmaking, be a mentor to the younger, filmmaker and stuff, and say, hey, come out on set, volunteer, I wish there was people like that, for me growing up, I kind of just had to learn on my own, so. So that's what.
Can I just add? One thing I meant to say is that, and I can tell you, like from the festival standpoint, like there are companies looking for content. Like that's the thing. They're aching for it. Like, they're not necessarily putting $1 million into your pocket, like maybe a TV show or a movie, but they're definitely looking and they're showing up to these festivals. I spoke to a woman last year who came to the festival, and I think their company's pretty new. I don't know that they're in a position to like sponsor this year's festival, but she showed up, like she paid her way, flew in from Chicago, somebody else flew in from Toronto, and they're coming from streaming companies who are like getting capital, and they are getting capital, like some of these companies, or they're getting bought by Netflix quietly. But it's a doorway in that didn't exist when I started in 2014 at all. So things have really changed, and in this medium, it's changing quickly. Maybe Hollywood's slow as shit, but in this digital space, and there is pressure now, and we're speaking up, right? Because we're being believed. So
You're only going to have one question, and I just have one quick addendum before
I
yours.
think you're going to ask the next question anyway.
So I just wanted to clarify. So there's this. What we know is that women are not making their stuff at the same rate that men are, but I think there's part of it is a confidence thing, right? Because we've been told that our stories don't matter, all of this. But the other thing, I was just reading this book about male versus female brain chemistry, and women's brains and estrogen actually makes us more risk averse. So it's also not so much about confidence necessarily as that we want more information before we make decisions, which during the 2008 financial collapse, the only bank that didn't lose its shirt was in Iceland, and it was run by women. And they went to them and they said, and it was because they didn't buy the derivatives there. And they went to them and they said, how did you not buy? Everyone was buying derivatives. And they're like, well, we asked them to explain to us what they were, and it didn't make any sense, so we didn't buy them.
right.
So it's not always a bad thing, like the need for more information, but where I think that hurts us with filmmaking is that nobody has any idea how to make a movie, right? And so we feel like, well, somebody must have more information than I do. They don't. Nobody has any idea how to make a movie. So like, know that.
No producer knows what they're doing until the film's done.
No.
And then they started again on another project.
Right. And so to me, like, that's the gap more, is that the men are just way more likely to be like, well, I guess we'll figure it out along the way, which is also what I did. But like, so don't let a lack of information be a hurdle. Like, just have coffee with people until you understand what's happening.
Which is kind of male gender stereotypes that, speaking fairly for men as well, that they have immense pressure to survive and be the breadwinner and look after their family, that, it's just, again, not an option not to make this project work, even if they don't know what they're going to do. And, that's something that you can unite on. I did just want to pick up on Danielle's point about mentorship. It's so easy to mentor someone else. I was working on a film in October, and it was an A-list cast, and I had a lovely girl who was my script supervisor, just straight out of film school. And sometimes on set, this thing that, the talent don't speak to the crew and all this bullshit. And, that just has to change immediately. And anyway, I was chatting to this girl. She was absolutely lovely. We went for coffee. And it turns out she was a writer, director, and I told her to send her material to me, and she had all her shit together, and that was so important. She had a website, everything was looking great. It took me 30 seconds to be impressed and to send it immediately off to my friend, who is Steven Spielberg's right-hand woman at the moment, writing on Jurassic Park, and she now has that mentor. That took me 30 seconds of my time. So to mentor other people, it was so difficult for me. You know, as an actress, someone, oh, could you introduce me to your agent? No way, it took me 5 years to get that agent, you're not sharing. And really, the only way we're going to change gender inequality is to push people through.
Right.
And I'm sure this wonderful, talented young girl, Madeline, she will write a film, she'll come back to me. I'll probably be 90 by then, but you know, she'll have a role for me. And it's just having that faith to keep pushing people through fearlessly. And people come back, so yeah.
When you all were talking about the confidence issue, I was thinking about a networking event I recently went to where I was talking to this recent college grad, and she was saying, oh, I'm an aspiring editor. I was like, well, have you edited a film? And she's like, yeah. I was like, but you're an editor, you know? And I think that's something that you probably wouldn't hear very many men say, that they're aspiring. They would just take the title. So going off that idea, I wanted to talk about, if you are that female filmmaker who is just starting out in the business, maybe you have no credits, maybe you have a couple credits and you just want to get in the door, what are the best ways to get your foot in the door?
I never know.
I would say my advice would just be to sort of attend networking events. Like, that's all I did. I did sort of like a year of market research before starting the festival, and I had no I'd be like, so I'm thinking of starting this thing, and people would stop talking, like industry, and come over to talk to me about it. So I knew that I had hit somewhere, because I'd gone to LA Webfest in 2013, and they kind of, like, they foolishly had it on Easter weekend. So there wasn't a huge New York representative. I had to cancel my Easter plans to go, but I wanted to be there. And I think they're still the biggest. They were the first to do it, but we just had nothing like this out here. But I'd gone to different like meetups, and I went to things like this, so I knew that there was an odd. But I mean, I had no confidence. I'm only saying that I started the first web series festival because it's year 5. Like, it took me this long, and because I just found out like what the statistics are for a startup to even survive 5 years for anybody, whether they have funding, whether they're a man, whether a woman. So that's even why I can say it with confidence, but it's just doing it, right? Like, it's just doing it, and I say attend networking events as much as possible, and events like this. That's what I think.
Yeah, but attend networking events with a thing, because that's actually the key to your story, because nobody wants to talk to the aspiring editor, and that's terrible, but it's true. Like, you don't want to be the person at the networking event who's like, please hire me, hire me, hire me. It is a way more powerful position to be in the thing of having a project or a thing that you're starting, or then people are going to want to talk to you. Even if your ultimate goal is to get hired by them, it's still more powerful to meet them from a place of you've got a project that you're looking for collaborators on. And again, you're not trying to do this project. You have a project that you're working, that you're making, and you're at X stage. I think that's.
And following on from that, just to make sure that you have clear goals of what you want and what you stand for as an artist, and to then match them to the events. So you're not just going to random events, that you're actually choosing who you want to go and meet, and find that correlation or overlap in your work, or where you want to take your work and what that person is doing. So when you meet, you have a natural connection and a natural conversation that happens, rather than, as you say, being needy, like, just hire me, that they can see that the relationship, a business relationship, could grow and develop. So be very specific on what you want, what you stand for, and anybody else, say no to. Don't chase anybody that doesn't fit into that little model that you've made for yourself. You know, have the balls to say, no, this is not where I want to go.
Sorry.
Punch
me if I start talking too much. So the best advice I ever got was write an artist statement.
Yes.
Just do it, and it's really hard, but just like write a paragraph that says who you are as an artist in the world and what you have to contribute, and why you're doing this, because it will focus exactly you. And not even in a goals way, but like, if this is who I am in the world, and like, this is what I have to offer, it's an incredibly powerful thing. Secondly, write down a list of every director of any thing, or if you're a director or writer, like a list of people whose work like turns you on and you want to work with them. And what you will be surprised by is it's actually a very small list, probably.
And that's when things get powerful, because you're blocking a lot of noise out.
Right. And like for a long time at the beginning, you're just chasing anybody, but you're chasing people whose work you don't get either. Like they're not going to get you because you don't get their work either. Figure out like who are your people, whether you know them or not, and then go find a way to work with those people. Secondly, then the next step is write down a list of everybody that you know that you would like to work with, who like really as an artist, like you get they're your people, and find a way to work with those people. And those people will probably lead to those people.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
The only thing, like I lead so much by instinct, right? And it's worked. Like every instinct I had and kind of thing that I wanted for the festival has come true. The only thing I kind of disagree with, like if you said you were an aspiring editor and I needed I'd look you up. Like this is how I found my sales director, and we increased sponsorship so much last year. She was in marketing, she was unemployed, but she had a marketing background, and like she became my sales director. So, and that was like a tech event. Like I didn't really have to,
and that's how it
you know what I
be.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
But I'm saying like it didn't really have to do with film, but I still found myself there. It was one of those things I had to walk past it to get to the train from work. So I went, but it changed my life in a lot of ways. So I disagree, like I agree with the planning, but I don't know, there's also some sort of randomness that can happen too, if you're in the right place at the right time.
I totally agree.
And it can happen a lot in New York, which maybe
Yeah.
other places don't have that same.
Absolutely, you're right, but I just think that planning is a little bit way to take into control where things that you can do yourself
That's right.
to control.
And
then, of course,
you have an instinct of who you want to work with.
And then be open to the magic.
That's right.
I would say like the same thing you mentioned about events and everything. When I started, like during the web series, it was like around like 2009, 2010, but I had a web show called On the Scene. So I had like a small camcorder. It was like, I was young, maybe like around like 26, 27, around that time. Or like 20, I can't even count. But in terms of that time, I went all the way to like LA, just discovering web series and trying to meet other people. I got a plane ticket. The hotel was like on a highway. I didn't have a car or anything.
Yeah.
I just went just to meet people in the web world. And so through that, I met a lot of people in the Writers Guild that came out to LA to learn about what is web series, how to promote it. During that time, we didn't know, much about, now it's like everybody has a web series,
Right.
like high school students have a web series. So so basically all of the people I met, had a day job, but they were able to kind of make it work, and this was like their dream. So and even like I met her over here a couple of years, not a couple of years ago, but a long time ago.
Yeah.
And like that's when I was just starting out in the film world. And it's great, just going to events, now you have Eventbrite, all these different things. You can go into the city and meet people, connect with, collaborate with. The next person you meet could be your next director or writer for another project that they need your help with. And, so you can get, paid work and everything. So, you're in the best place in the world in New York to meet and, connect. So you just got to just throw yourself in there and just meet people. I'm like the nervous type person whenever I meet anyone. And so I kind of just jumped in and just said, hey, always have your business card, just because you never know that person's gonna send you an email like the next day or the night, just saying, would I be able to come out and set with you or help out? And yeah, it's true, you never know.
So how can we encourage people from indie filmmakers at no or low budget level to the top Hollywood execs to hire more women for projects?
Because films by women make more money. This is true. We commissioned a study for the 51 Fund. If a film has a female director, producer, writer, or lead actor, it makes more money. Not gross, because men get given bigger budgets, therefore in gross revenue they make more money, but if you look at per dollar spent, how much money does the film make back? It is higher across the board if you have women in those roles, and that is the best argument we can possibly make to them, because that's what they understand.
Yeah.
You said it.
So if a woman we could say an actress because that's been in the news a lot, or just anyone else in film discovers that they're making less than their male counterparts on the same job, what would you suggest that she do?
It's quite a difficult question because obviously the fact that it exists means there's a problem, and women speaking out haven't changed that, as you'll say, from what year, 19, God knows when. It's been an ongoing problem. So we really actually need men on board to help us do this. So having dialogues, uniting with male actors. Benedict Cumberbatch just announced that he refuses point blank, I think it was yesterday, to work with a female co-star unless she's being paid the same as him. He has the power to do that, and unfortunately sometimes feminism is about admitting that we need to unite and have males on board helping us because they by definition have the power. So it's making those relationships, and again working with people that you admire, men that you admire, that you know are going to do that, and they are not going to work unless they're being paid the same amount. Because I don't think females know, do they? It's not like, I would say speak out, but it's all very hush. It's going through agents.
Right.
So it's trying to get, otherwise the inequality wouldn't be there in the first place. Maybe you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can speak out, but you might get fired,
Right.
and that's the really hard thing. So I think I love your idea of appealing to allies who have a position of power. And I think white women can do that for women of color too, because that, I mean, if it's bad for white women, it's way worse for women of color. And there's that story that came out about Jessica Chastain and Octavia Spencer. They were working on a movie, and Jessica found out that Octavia was getting paid way less than her, and Jessica, who was in the position of power in that situation, went and fought with the producers and got Octavia to be paid as much as she was. So I think it's about being good allies to each other, and
and having that really dialogue with your agent, because it's your agent that's doing these deals. And I've even read stories where an agent is same clients, one female, one male, and negotiated a different deal. I mean, that's outrageous.
Yeah.
So really grilling your agent before you sign a deal, and knowing that these people are representing you, and looking how they're representing their other clients, because that's going to give you an indication of the type of team that you put around you. So it's always putting these empowering people around you, that's your team, that are going to represent you and make solid choices.
But the agents are a massive part of this problem, because they are the ones who know what everybody's getting paid, and they frequently negotiate less for their women. So, fuck them.
I wanted to talk about another disparity, which is that I've noticed just by reading articles and stuff that I think women tend to get more critique about how diverse their shows are, whether it's in terms of gender, race, or anything. Like, for example, I saw a lot of critique when the Mindy Project was on that Mindy Kaling did not make her show diverse enough. There were too many white men, and the reality is that she was an Indian woman leading a show, which you never ever see. And I just didn't tend to see the same kind of critiques about
with girls. It happened with Sex and the City.
Right. About shows led by white men. And so I was wondering, she even said at the South by Southwest panel, she said, I have to become the United Nations of shows? So I'm wondering, do you feel as a woman in the industry that your work is held to different standards than men's work, or do you feel that it's scrutinized or critiqued in a different way?
So we just passed that. Everybody wants to answer this one. I know. This is, oh my gosh. I remember when I did Brooklyn is in Love, a black male director, he reached out to me too and said that, there's not much diversity, in the series, but there was a lot of black, actors, and one of the leads that played Brian was a black, actor, and also Hispanic. There was a lot of Hispanic, on the show, and especially for season 2. So it's like, definitely think of, like, if I was a man, that I wouldn't be criticized a little bit the same way.
You would be applauded.
Yeah, right. It's true. I would ask, that kind of questions, but yeah, it's, diversity is very important. I continue to strive like that, for all the projects that I'm working on, even for the project I'm working on is The Haunted Mind of Insomniac. It's a film noir thriller, and it's the black, the lead actor is black male, and a lot of the characters are Hispanic and black, mixed in. And usually for horror films, the only film I know is like Get Out, that one that came out. So yeah, it's just like, as being content creators and female content creators, we just got to continue to strive and to create content, and make it open for everybody. And even, it's not just in terms of, the black community, the Asian community, Hispanic, like really have to like open that door for a lot of, because so many great actors and very talented that definitely deserve a chance, too, so.
Yeah, and I think like women are guilty of the critiquing, right? Like it's usually other women, because these were women's shows that got the, Lena Dunham got it, the Sex and the City definitely got it, I remember that. There's one more other show too that I thought of, and again, they were all female-led shows, and like HBO wasn't getting this heat for like The Sopranos, or like they just weren't.
Yeah.
And so I find that oftentimes it's also women doing the critiquing. I know it was recently enough, somebody was saying how, what's her name from the Hunger Games, Jennifer Lawrence, like she couldn't carry a film or something like that, and people freaked out because her recent movie didn't do well. And so people got really pissed off, but instead of being mad at the critic, they really threw her under the bus. And I was just like, it really irritated me, because all I kept thinking of like the white Hollywood legends who play the same character in every single movie, right? Harrison Ford, Al Pacino, like I don't look at Jennifer Lawrence and think she's not trying hard. Like I think she's actually working and like trying to, it just bugged me, but it was all women throwing her under the bus. And I just thought, like, I just left it. I just thought maybe the argument was sort of more to the person that wrote the article that didn't like that this, pretty blonde woman wasn't doing well. But no, everybody was like throwing her under the bus.
So yes, our work is definitely held to a different standard. And it is really irritating when people who already have diversity are then criticized for not having like perfect diversity.
Yeah.
And then
what's perfect?
Right, and then the white men are like, well, they just don't get it. And they put like one person in and everyone's like, oh my god, they're so amazing.
Yeah.
They're like, what the fuck? But I do think that we also have to do better. I think we want to build in making our own work, in building the industry that we want. I think we have to do better and really and show by example how this is possible, and how we don't have to just solve white feminism, we don't just have to solve the people of color disparity, but like we can actually do it all at the same time.
And work together.
And work together, because the most powerful tactic of the powerful to keep us out is going to be to separate us. And there's a long history, not just in the film industry, but throughout all of history, of separating those two groups, and then the powerful get to stay in power. So I think we do have to do better for that reason, and we do have to be aware of diversity and gender all at the same time. It's not that complicated, like it really isn't. Yeah.
This is going to be another broad question. I was wondering, is the idea of even just making it in the industry, is that idea in the traditional sense outdated now? With, people can create their own web series, they can make content that's not the traditional movie or TV show, they can make, virtual reality or web content or interactive content. Is there a world in which making it in the like Hollywood sense is outdated, and how does that change our relationship as filmmakers with the decision makers in the industry?
I think it's going back to, as Naomi said, about making your artist statement and your goals and knowing what you want to do, because when you break that down, you'll find actually making it is about achieving something that you've set out to do. And then after that, you might make bigger goals, or your goals may change, but in that moment, you have an idea of what you want to do, and success is, and in any other career, defined as completing that and being successful or learning from it or having an experience and going out and doing it. And I think Hollywood forgets this completely, and it has very sort of climatic view of how life should be. And I think we have to just break it down and stick to those goals, and not be intimidated by this thought of making it where you do end up getting exploited and you start chasing things that are superficial, and they're not going to take care of you, and they're not in line with who you are, and that's when things start to go wrong, like can go badly wrong. Yeah, does that make sense?
I think making it has changed because like making it in the cliche way, because sort of the people in charge, it was always the same sort of 5 people in charge, like at the studio level or even the record label level. I think that digital has changed a lot of that. I think social media has changed that. I think that now it's a little bit more democratic, right? Like people are seeing somebody talented on YouTube, and like, our mom or grandparent, like they have no idea who these people are. And like my nephews, like they're not watching. I just was at home in Toronto with my family, and like my nephews are coming home and getting on the computer. Like they're not putting on the television. And the stuff that they like is the stuff that they like, the shows that, there are those primetime shows that are addictive, right? The cooking, they like to cook, so they like those like cooking, those competition shows are all addictive, no matter what kind you watch. So I think that the kids want to be an influence. I don't think it matters what's on the radio. I still have a stereo, but I'm really not listening to it like I'm listening to like Apple Music or Spotify. So I think that making it does become a different thing. Like making it is like 1 million Instagram followers, isn't it? Like, isn't that what making it is now? I don't know that it's being in a movie with Tom Cruise, because if you have 1 million Instagram followers, I think it's like you can get like 75K a post. Like that's better than being in a movie. Seriously, it's.
You can also probably be in a movie with Tom Cruise.
That's right. Like definitely The Rock will look at you, right? His production company signing these. So I think that making it has it's a completely different. It's outdated.
And can I just add something?
Sorry, love.
And it's also tied with money, so it's also a way to redefine how we measure success, especially as females or males. That we measure our success by income and money, and it's very, especially in America. And actually, it should be much more about core values. So I can give you a great example. About 5 years ago, I was cast in a lead role in a film called, I think it was Vampire Lesbian Killers, if the title didn't tell you. And I got the script, and it was basically topless vampires wrestling in mud. So I turned it down without a second thought. And about 2 years later, I was on a Virgin Atlantic flight, and this fucking film was on. I'm starving artist, I haven't eaten, and this film's playing. And for a moment, I was like, oh my God, and my mom and dad would have seen it, and they would have been able to put a label and an understanding on success. It went around all the red carpets, and then no one ever heard of it ever since.
Right.
Whereas now I have a film that's in the Whitney. It's a feature artistic film. I picked the script. It is dealing with what Trump is putting this country through. It is dealing with everything I believe in, and it's playing at one of the biggest museums in the world. That to me that was great for me. I felt, and even my mum was like, oh, okay, but can they turn on the TV and see me? No. So it's really about aligning who you are and what your goals are, and really sticking to them and not being intimidated by this money and earning. And
Right.
So I agree with everything that you've said, and we do actually deserve to be paid for what we do.
Thank you.
So I think this is the thing, like, crowdfunding is awesome. Web series are awesome. Like the fact that production has been democratized to the point that we can all do it is so good, because it's giving us the opportunity to demonstrate what we can do, and it's giving us like I was saying it before, like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, none of us would have had careers. None of us
100%.
would be here, and that's just, I definitely would not have made a feature film yet, because the gatekeepers would have kept me out. I've made 2 feature films because they couldn't, because I went around them. So that is great. However, Hollywood still has most of the money, and they get paid to do what they do, and we are not yet.
Right.
So and we were having this discussion of, and this is like a constant discussion of like, do we keep trying to take over Hollywood, or do we just like build our own thing over here? And I don't know. My feeling is sort of like we have to continue on both fronts simultaneously. But we do have to figure out how to pay ourselves. So if we're building this new thing, which I mean, that's the idea that appeals to me more, because I think they...
Because you can do what you want then.
And they're kind of horrible. Like, I don't really want to keep their kingdom. But, like, we have to figure out how to pay ourselves in that format.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I'll just say I absolutely agree, and even on artistic films, so that the film and Whitney, you can demand to be paid. You might not get a full salary, but you can demand to be paid. And asking is really important, and it's something artists forget at the lower level, to actually say, hey, by the way, you're saying this, can you actually pay me something? Can you pay me this amount? And you'll be surprised. When you ask the question to be paid, you usually get paid.
And as creators, like, building that into the budget, because I think, particularly on a low budget project, we all feel like, oh, well, I shouldn't take a fee. I just won't take a fee, and then I'll do this other job. And then, so on my second, and on an $80,000 film, nobody's getting paid, so we didn't get paid. But on my second film, which was a $500,000 film, at the beginning when we were budgeting, I said, I am getting paid, the director is getting paid, the producers are getting paid a living. I mean, it's not a living wage because it takes 5 years to make a movie, but like, we are getting paid like a reasonable amount of money, and there is absolutely nothing that's going to happen to the budget that is going to change that. And because we set that out, we did get paid. And if we hadn't done that, it would have gotten chipped away and everything, so build that in for yourselves.
The only thing I was going to say about that in terms of Hollywood is that I think that they're paying somewhat attention because they know that there are these kids paying like they're not going to the theaters, but they are contributing to crowdfunding campaigns for shows with people of color. So like Black Panther doesn't necessarily just get created in a vacuum. They know that people of color are spending money somewhere. It's also shitty though, right? Because you're not really paying yourself when you're crowdfunding. And I can tell you I'm not rich off the festival, but it brought people in, and then when you bring people in, like, money does follow. It does take longer, but it does follow.
Yeah.
So lately people have, in addition to paying attention to wage inequalities and the sexual harassment issues, people have been paying more attention to what percentage of films at major film festivals are directed by women. And I was wondering, how can we get to a world where these numbers are 50-50?
Question, like, basically what we just talked about, before, piggybacking the last question, but yeah, it's just like, if we are in, right now it's like the best time ever. Well, I shouldn't say the best time, but it's the Me Too movement, and it's helping out a lot of people, especially filmmakers, female filmmakers, and everybody, because the conversation is starting to happen. And I think like as content creators or directors, producers, it's a good time because now we can say what we have to say, and also how even actresses and male actors can get paid the same, and even right now I'm working on a project for the feature film. I'm in charge of the budgeting and everything, so we kind of just like, oh, this is my budget, how do I make it stretch and everything, but I make sure that like the lead that's in the project is getting paid the same as the co-star actress or leads actress that's with him. So yeah, just being mindful and just not being afraid to say what you want to say. So yeah.
You could probably speak to this more, but in terms of the film festival, like I pay attention to some of what the major film festivals are letting in. A lot of them are female-directed pictures. I just don't know that if they get picked up or bought, but it seems like people are getting into these festivals. You hear about it in Sundance and Toronto, but I just don't know what money, like development deals or anything that are happening.
Yeah, so with regards to the film festival specifically, 3 things. One, Tribeca was 50-50 this year for the first time ever, and they're the first major festival to actually reach 50-50, so shout out Tribeca and like positive encouragement, that's awesome. And they're the places that can change the most quickly, right? So they could get us there much faster because there's less infrastructure, it's just like, what do you choose? Secondly, I know for a fact that Sundance, only 20% of the film submissions they receive are from female directors. So make your shit and submit it to Sundance. And thirdly, to your point, they're not getting bought at a festival at the same rate. So this is the other problem. So there are so many stories of a male filmmaker makes a film, it goes to Sundance, it gets picked up for a Marvel movie immediately, first feature film. Colin Trevorrow, of course, is the prime example who then stuck his foot royally later on. And Ava DuVernay went to made a micro-budget feature, went to Sundance, won Sundance, nobody called her. She couldn't get her second film made, she went and made another micro-budget film, she went back to Sundance and won again, and that's when Selma happened, but only because David Oyelowo, the actor, fought tooth and nail for her to direct that movie. So, yes, there's another hurdle there, but at least get into Sundance, and then we'll deal with that hurdle. Also public shaming is very effective.
Yeah.
And it's very effective
Right.
on festivals specifically. So if you see festivals that are not 50-50, shame them.
Switching from the business end of things to content end of things, it's especially in the light of Me Too, how do you think that sexual harassment and sexual assault should be handled on screen by filmmakers of all genders? These issues are obviously widespread, and art can be a great way to address them, but at the same time, so many films and TV shows have ongoing issues with gratuitous scenes or maybe not handling things in a way that's helping anything. So what would you guys say about that?
Okay, I literally just wrote this chapter for my book, so I have a lot to say on this. Okay, so number one, who is getting assaulted in movies? In real life, men are actually victims or survivors of sexual assault twice as often as women. That is true. Also, people of all ages and all levels of attractiveness are assaulted. In film, it is almost exclusively beautiful young women. So what that is, so that plants this image in our brain that that is who is vulnerable in our society, when the reality is that is actually not what's going on. That is super problematic. Secondly, it is disproportionately portrayed on screen, usually as a lazy thing, right? It's usually just lazy writing. It's like, well, we need, particularly on TV shows, almost every TV show hits a point where they're like, well, we're running out of plot, we better rape somebody, you know, like, then we can deal with that for a season. So like, that is horrible if it is just lazy writing. And secondly, where is the focus? Frequently it's used as an inciting incident for the man to then go avenge that rape, which is not a useful plot point, right? It like makes men feel really good, but that is a really exploitative use of rape in a film or a TV show. Also, like, what are you showing on screen? Is it titillating? A little bit, right? Frequently it is. Are you showing the victim's face? Are you showing the bodies? Are you showing her nudity? Do you need to actually see the rape on screen? They're like all of these, it's a nuanced thing. I mean, personally, I feel like we should really just put a moratorium on it for like 5 years because God knows, yes, it happens. Yes, it's real. Yes, art is a way to process these things. I feel like we have processed that more than anything else. But I do feel like there is a way to do it in a way that is about the survivor's experience of it and not as titillation or as a plot point to incite a male
To the
character
rest of the
to do
show,
something.
yeah.
I actually find this question very difficult, and I really appreciated your answer. The only thing I would add is I don't believe, and you might be right and I might be wrong about that you have to stop something. I would be very keen to see the female perspective of
The aftermath,
yeah,
especially.
totally. I just don't know the answer to this question, and it's something that has to be stopped, as you said, from the male perspective for all those reasons you said, which was really great to hear, because I do find this question hard. But I would like to see the female perspective of how that's portrayed, because we have no idea, really.
Totally.
I have one more question for you all, and then we're going to go to the audience for questions. So who are some of the women you admire in the business today?
It's like too many. I don't know. I would say, it's hard. I have a lot of them, but I would say like maybe Shonda Rhimes, I think, even though that's kind of like, it's awesome. But I mean, how she created the show with like Grey's Anatomy, and it's been on for like maybe almost 15, or maybe close to 15 years, maybe. I don't know, 13 years maybe. And then she's been basically like ABC and network all of her shows were able to do for like on a Thursday night schedule. And it's like how she was able to start it and start off in the industry and, you know, be a writer for other shows and then all of a sudden have her own show. But it even took her a while to like, you know, knowing who this person was in the beginning for Grey's Anatomy. You know, you didn't know who the writer was, you know, in the beginning, but, you know, that kind of really inspired me, like how this person was able to do it. And so yeah, that's kind of, you know, that really kind of keeps me going.
For me, it's just anybody that's giving opportunity to other women, like Ava DuVernay. I just recently went to a screening of a film that's on Netflix now, and that's being distributed through Ava's company, and I met that lovely director who just, you know, I think it just went on Netflix. Yeah, that's it for me. You know, people that they're putting their money where their mouth is. And they're all companies that I'm going to be approaching for my festival this year because I've got the numbers to back it up. Like, really, are you really pushing women through? Because like they're coming, you know, like they're here.
My answer is 100% Shonda and Ava. Yeah, because both of those women I respect to no end because they pulled themselves up from nothing. It wasn't like legacy, it wasn't, they pulled themselves up from nothing and they made it happen for themselves against all odds. And secondly, they have consistently reached back down the ladder and pulled other women up behind them, like what Ava's done with Queen Sugar, only hiring female directors. Shonda has definitely been amazing about hiring people onto her shows who wouldn't otherwise get hired. And talk is really cheap. And there's a lot of talk in the industry right now, and there's a lot of people like sort of like making a speech about it, but like actions are really important. And a lot of these people who are speaking, not to throw anybody under the bus, but like are actually in positions to do something about it and aren't. Like I kept thinking watching at the Golden Globes, all of those actresses who wore black, and I was like, okay, but if you called your agents tomorrow and said, going forward, 50% of my slates must be directed by women, it would change. And so, yes, Ava and Shonda.
All my peers, people that are in the room today that were here listening and wanting to find out about, there's Danielle who introduced me to be on this panel. That means so much to me. And I also want to mention, say, Rose McGowan and people that went first, because they, you know, they are still being attacked, and by women. It's very much in the industry now that they didn't do it the right way. And of course, I'm not saying they're getting everything right, far from it, but what they're doing is revolutionary. They went first, and that's why there was no protocol to make a change like that. There was no rule book. So they did it in the most fierce activism way that made this movement to be heard possible, and yet they're still now being attacked for not doing it quite right or doing it a little bit too radical. And they literally opened the doors so we could be heard and make our films. So I definitely want to shout out to Azia and Rose and all the ladies here and gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Sorry, this has nothing to do with the question you just asked, but you just said something that related to an earlier stream that I wanted to pick up on, which is we gotta be kinder to each other.
Yeah.
Like there is a thing that's happening right now of like just tearing to pieces everybody who is like, and I get it because the stakes are so high right now, and like you just feel like every time somebody makes a mistake, it's like, oh God, what if that's our one shot? But like, dudes, it's hard, right? Like as somebody, you know, who has been a public figure in a smaller sphere about this, like people are brutal. And like we're all just fucking doing our best, and like we all just want to change this. So I think there's a way of having a respectful dialogue about how to do things better without attacking. And Lena Dunham, I mean, I'm not a fan of her show. Like her stuff doesn't really speak to me. But the ferocity with which she has been attacked, like she's not my bag, but I'm so happy that what happened to her happened. And like she opened a lot of doors, and she was really brave in a lot of ways. And yeah, she has said a bunch of stupid shit, and she's got a lot of things wrong. And sometimes you're just like,
she has more anger towards her than Harvey Weinstein does, right?
Like,
how can that be?
Totally. And this thing, because there was that whole thing where the writer on her show got accused, and then she defended him, and the vitriol of articles that were written about her after that were so much meaner than anything that had been written about Harvey Weinstein. And I was like, what the fuck? Like we just have to like be nice to each other, because again, like separating ourselves from each other is the easiest way for the people in power to stay in power.
Can I just add to that? Yeah, I was obviously one of those people that really shocked me with that. But there is a way to communicate when people don't do something in a way. It's a dialogue that we should be having and uniting. You know, feminism is about working out what works and taking on other people's ideas and building a new path forward. We need to do it together. So just what I say.
And we don't all have to agree, guys. Like, we can disagree. As somebody who was born in Cape Town during apartheid, like, my parents were jealous of us growing up in Canada that we were allowed to have different opinions. You know, like, there's a real positive price to pay for having freedom. And I think having differing opinions is one of them. Not I think, I know.
Right, do we have audience questions? Yes.
Naomi, your friends on Facebook.
Yes, hi.
You mentioned that men get harassed and assaulted at twice the rate of women.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about your sources on that and the numbers? Where is that coming from?
That's a pretty well-established fact. I'm happy to, I have it cited in the book, so I would be happy to email you the source, but it's mostly because of prisons. That's where that is mostly happening, but it is true.
And Catholic
Gun
churches.
violence.
And Catholic churches.
Anyone else?
Sometimes when I talk about the pay gap with gender disparity in Hollywood, people just dismiss it as like, oh, well, she's only making $5 million instead of $10 million. And it's not very relatable for the average audience member. How do you guys, women, as independent filmmakers who are a lot more relatable for most audience members in terms of finances, how do you make audience members care about this issue that aren't necessarily women in film?
That's actually a really excellent question, and it's something that I'm going to be bringing up this year with the festival, because like I said, some of the sponsors that have come through have gone on and signed some of these web series, and they're to like exclusive deals, so they can't be on another streaming company. So there is some money being exchanged, and a lot of the shows, which I'm proud to say, are female-led shows that have been picked up from around the world. One from Australia was just picked up. There are a lot from sort of more underrepresented communities as well. So it is something I'm going to discuss with them. That's a great question.
I don't know that that's a conversation we need to have with audiences. I think it's a losing argument with them, because I think you're right. Like, most people in this country make less than $50,000 a year. Like, they are not interested in hearing about a gap of like a couple $1 million. It's I mean, like, and they shouldn't. You know, I mean, that's like. So that is a conversation we must have with each other and with the industry, and it's something we must fight for within the industry. I actually avoid that topic generally when speaking to non-film people, because there's a lot of arguments to make, and I feel like that's not the strongest one. The ones I lead with are really helping them understand how the fact that 95% of films that they have ever seen are directed by men, how that is affecting their worldview and the worldview of their daughters and sons. That, to me, is the winning argument with people. And if we can get them on board with that idea, that will help fix all of the rest of the things.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, this is for Joanna. I am interested in crossing genres between the film world and the museum world. And I don't find this particularly as a woman, although it's there too, because in the gallery world and the museum world, there's just as much a prejudice against women as there is, I think, in the film world. But what I'm most interested in is, how did you get your film even considered by the Whitney?
I was performing in it, I was acting in it, I didn't direct the film.
Oh, I see. So you don't know how that film ended up there, or maybe you do?
So the director I was working with is a very well-known artist called Josephine Megsepper. So when she sent me the script, I knew her work, and it was set in Washington, D.C., and it's a sort of love triangle about Claude Debussy's opera, and very poignant, addressing sort of politics that were happening, and she sort of merged a period time with the inauguration of Trump, So I knew I wanted to be involved with it and worked. I deliberately worked with her and chose to work with her.
So it came to you through that connection that you had with her personally, or did that get delivered to your agent and then to you?
A friend suggested that I went to audition for it, and I auditioned and got the role. But it was very much someone knowing that I would be interested in the project and putting us together. And they got it right because I got the role. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I've been in the show business for a very long time, and I decided to branch out on my own because when I first came out, they had no roles for women, mostly prostitutes and hookers and drug addicts. So I came out and I wrote my own show, and eventually I turned into 5 plays into now a book, which I put into, I've been producing, directing, writing. But now since I've seen you ladies up here, and congratulations, I'm happy to see women out there. And it's funny, I wrote a play called The March, way before The March came out.
Wow.
And touching, I would love to see my work turned into film. It's The Saturday Affair, which deals with, again, women, relationship with the HIV virus we're dealing with. The March, which is about women protesting against the injustice that they've been going through with men. Soul Love, the anthology of us, our feelings, our emotions as people, and each play represent a piece of what we stand for. And I decided this year to come out with this play. So I would love if you ladies would work with me and, come to the, you'd have to read the book first and see where we can go from there. Because a lot of people ask me for it, but I would rather give it to us as women and see where we can go for that. So if you would talk to me afterwards, we can discuss this. I am launching this book, brand new, coming out in August.
Oh, wow.
So,
Congrats.
I would love, so it took a long time, 20 years for this, but it was my feeling of not being relatable, not liking what I saw that made me went out on my own. So, and now I'm saying,
Congrats.
Thank you.
I think all our stories show that it's sort of frustration and all these problems that push us on in our career.
Yeah.
So everything you're doing is because you're just like, I can't play this role
I know.
anymore. I can't be. My first 3 roles, I was a hooker. And the first one I enjoyed, And then the second time I was like, okay. And the third time I was like, what the fuck?
What's going on?
But it's so awesome. I feel like we're just hitting this point, like sort of like cosmically and historically. We're just at this moment where like collectively we're just like, no, we are not doing that anymore, and we're just gonna write our own books, and we're gonna make our own web series, and like it's just we're at this really exciting moment. So
this is also really important, is that we have to solve that. If we can't expect them, an artist can only write from their perspective. So I'm seeing a lot of this with a few female friends, that they are expecting men to write them better female roles because of this Me Too movement, and they're not happy with something a man's written. But actually, it's the female perspective. We need to write those roles.
Yes.
So great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jumping off of that, I'd like to talk a little bit, or ask a little bit about funding. I think the greatest barrier for anyone at an indie level, or really any level, but to get your work made, is the money. And wanting to pay people and pay people as well as you can, but finding that maybe crowdfunding is not sustainable for more than a couple of times. And so what are some steps that you would recommend of how to reach out to money people, or where do we even find those people? If you don't have those connections already, what are some suggestions you would have?
Have you guys heard of Fractured Atlas? Was I the last person to hear about it? I think that, no, I just think it's like a fractured atlas. Like I feel like there are these resources that maybe some of us aren't sharing or didn't know about. Like I think maybe that's part of the power thing as well, right? Like a lot of women didn't know about this, some of these companies as well. So I think it's also a matter of sharing what information we do find out. Like that's what I've been trying to do with my festival, and like, I'm really bringing it more this year because it's so important.
So I have done a lot of fundraising, both between my own 2 films and then with 51 Fund, which is a $50 million thing. So I've done it like baby crowdfunding, 80,000 all the way up there. And this is a very complex answer, and I actually have a financing workshop that I do for filmmakers that I've done everywhere but New York. But if someone wants to invite me to do it in New York, I'll do it here. But basically, like, you have to really understand that there are a bunch of different types of investors. I mean, finding investors is incredibly hard. When I'm looking for investors, I feel like I'm like an ant with like my antenna up, and I just put my investor antenna up and then like try to get myself into situations where I can meet them. And like any kind of networking, it's a lot of dead ends, and then you find a couple people. Your goal is to figure out what you have that they want. So for some people, they're just looking up at it as a straight film, as a straight money investment. Probably they're not looking at indie film if they're looking for that, but they do exist. There are people who just want to be on the red carpet, who are just like, they just want to be involved in film, and they have like very boring jobs. So dentists proportionally invest more money than any other category of people in film, and particularly Texan dentists. This is a real thing. Go to Texas, go to the dentist, because they have very boring jobs, right? But they have a lot of money, and they're looking for something a little excitement. And they're like, So there are those people, and then right now there are a lot of women in film investors. There really are, and if you can make the case of why film is the way to change the world for women in general, which I think is a very clear case. There are women who will invest, and men who will invest now based on that. If you look up, I've raised so much money off my TED Talk, which sort of lays out that case specifically, and you can use it too. It's like an 18-minute, like, here is why you should be investing in women's film, and like send it to people and raise money on it.
Someone else here have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, from everything that I've heard, I'm actually trying to get into the film industry and more into like journalism. It's a tough industry, right? I mean, you get it. I mean, you try to make your films like on pretties because sometimes you don't get this opportunity. I just want to know, like, at a personal level, what keeps you motivated, right?
That's such a great question.
My answer is to weigh the alternative, right? Like, I'm like all weepy because I miss my family in Toronto, but you know what? I was fucking freezing the entire time I was there. So it's like, okay, well, what do I like? Do I want to be like? I just think it's weighing the alternative, and you don't really know until you've tasted it, right? Like, I could go work a corporate job, or I could keep struggling and having my own film festival. But the bigger it gets, the more powerful I become. Like, I'm here on this, right? No, but it's true.
I used to work at CNN full time, and I quit. I run a startup and a company now, and it's so hard.
Yeah. Right.
It's tough, and that's why I asked this question, because you guys are all been for that.
Right. I think it's measuring the alternatives, but you have to try it first. You have to get a taste.
I'm sorry.
So let's wrap this. Let's bring this conversation out to the bar area outside. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. I had such a great time talking to you. Thank you for all the good questions.